Hey everyone, welcome to the Unearth with Shelly Hughes podcast. I'm Shelly Hughes. Today we're talking about data. I'm really excited to talk about this today because I use data all the time in my business. I am really passionate about finding that balance between data and intuition and how data can maybe even help shape a lot of that gut feeling things that you have, or not even shape it, but affirm it. So I'm going to go through specifically my data tracking tool, the kind of metrics that I track, how it's changed over the years, and how I kind of set it up. Again, this is Unearth with Shelly Hughes. We talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of business ownership and entrepreneurship. I really love to go into the epic fails, the wins, the challenges, and especially the lessons learned of growing a passionate, profitable brand. So I truly believe that business ownership um, is such an art and a science, right? Intuition is so important when it comes to business ownership, but sometimes if you don't have data to back it up, it can be very egotistical in some ways. So, for example, we work with clients all the time in kind of the strategy and marketing strategy space. And one of the first things I ask when we go into a relationship with a new client, and we kind of do our kickoff call and discovery call, and try to get into the brain of not just the entrepreneur, the business leader, but their target audience. And I ask, who's your target audience? Who are they? What do they like? What don't they like? What are their demographics? What are their job functions? Both, functionally the job, what are they paid to do? Socially, how do they want to be perceived? And emotionally, how do they want to feel? What are those job roles that they have? And, most of our clients have thought about this before, they call it target audience. They're this is how they feel. And they kind of spout off some of these ideas. But what I find a lot is, number one, a lot of the ideas that they have are based on assumptions, not always facts. They might not be getting the true feedback from their audience for clients from one reason or another, or that's not actually their target audience in the first place. It's just kind of the audience that has fallen into their lap. And it's so interesting. I just had a strategy meeting with a client last month, and I gave her some client assignments of, thinking about who her target audience is and things like that. And when we were going through this target audience persona, I kind of had the feeling that this was a challenging client to work for. And I had to ask her, I'm like, client, is this actually your ideal client? Is this actually the person that you want to work for? And she's like, maybe not. So that completely switches our conversation, right? So, but when we're thinking about, if let's say we do have a target audience, we know that this is a person we love to work with, this kind of demo, this kind of psychographic, these issues that they have. But a lot of times we put when we talk about the problems and challenges that they face, desires that they face, we kind of put things in their mouths, right? We kind of say, oh, this is what they want, or this is what they're asking for, but we've never actually asked them. And so, I work internally. We do this, but if it's at a higher degree, we hire organizations to help us do focus groups and truly ask them these questions. Because what's so interesting is when you are able to talk in the language of your target audience, they perceive you at such a different level than if you use your own jargon or your own language. And, some people say that is, a little bit, it's not the most, honest way of going about it, but people are so keen to their own stories. And if you're able to tap into those stories, it's just so much, you can tell it so much more powerfully, and you can honestly sell to them and talk to them in their own language. So the point of this is, yes, I think intuition is so important in business, but sometimes our own intuition can be biased based on our past experiences, our personal problems, the way that we think. And, we really have to, it's really hard to truly get out of our own shoes and put them in someone else, especially if we don't know what they're up to on a day-to-day basis. So, So that's kind of what we're talking about here is, when to use intuition, when to use data. When I always say, when you are testing a new product or before you launch a new product, how do you test it, right? How do you use data to test a new product? For example, if I were to launch a book tomorrow, maybe I have a concept of what the book's about loosely, right? But what I would do is I would run a Facebook ad test. I would take a book concept and I would create 70 book titles, all slightly different, or very, very different. And I might spend $200 on Facebook ads and just run those book titles. And what you can do is have each of these ads have a link to send a user to a waitlist landing page. Something that says, this book is under construction. Here's a waitlist to sign up. No need to pre-order, but it'll just let us know that you are interested in this book. And what that does is manyfold, right? One, it shows you data on what people are clicking on. So if they think that they can order this book just by clicking this ad, you're going to see if there's a 15% difference in someone clicking this book title versus, this book title, that 15%, if you're selling, thousands and thousands of books, that's a huge difference, right? So that's going to help you use data to really make good informed decisions on your business. But two, it's a lead gen tool, right? Now you're going to have all the emails of all these people that are interested in that book. And, when it does get published, you can let all those people know. Three, when they're in there, you could utilize some kind of customer needs assessment tool. So you can ask questions like, hey, what do you struggle most in X, Y, and Z industry or job? What kind of guidance are you looking for? Because I would so much rather spend money on that so I get the product right instead of just going with my gut, going with my instinct and just testing things and putting a ton of effort and ton of energy into this huge project like writing a book, getting it published, getting it edited, getting it printed, and then it not hitting its biggest potential. And, I know people who would not agree with me. I know people who say, I only run on intuition and I love that. That's just not how I work, right? So you can use data by analyzing the data from those landing page customer needs assessment, from that Facebook ad, click-through rate and things like that, and write that book. That's the book that you're going to write. So I always think if you're not tracking your data, you're not getting a good picture on what the situation is currently and where you have to make changes in your business. So, I do not run my businesses based, I don't run them passively. I want to be very active in the decisions I make, and I want to be really confident in those decisions. Yes, there are a ton of times where I'm saying, okay, I have to make a decision quickly. Hopefully it's the right one. Oh, that was not the right decision to make. Okay, let's pivot fast, right? But if I can, I want to be able to collect the data. So even if I'm not using this data today, I will have the data for the future to support some of those decisions that I make. And for me, the biggest thing about data collection is I need a dashboard. I need a dashboard that I can look at it quickly and kind of get a sense of the health of the business and in different key metrics that I follow. Because last thing you want is to be drowning in data. And if you can find a way to aggregate all that data into kind of an insightful dashboard, that's going to be key. I was just talking to a new client yesterday, and they're unfortunately firing their agency, and they want to hire us, and they ask how I deal with data. I think they were interested in some digital marketing support, and I'm like, honestly, we don't send screenshots. We don't send, we don't just send like, here's your numbers for the month, right? Because honestly, the numbers don't really matter unless there's a story behind it. So what we like to do is we give the clients full access to whether it's a GA4 or Tableau or wherever we use to aggregate this data. And what we do every month is give them insights on what the data means. Again, no snapshots included. So we can say, hey, we ran this PR campaign and we saw, X increase in, this UTM tag on both, the PR campaign and our digital campaigns and how they went hand in hand. And so we can really see exactly the story behind the numbers instead of just the numbers. So if you can find a way to create a dashboard of some of those key metrics that you are trying to track, it'll give you in 5 seconds what the healthier business can look like. I have I call it a business development tracker, but honestly, it's much bigger than that. But I put it together with Laura DiFrancesco, a good friend of mine. Taught myself Excel because that was just simply not a strength of mine, but I knew exactly what I wanted. Laura helped with a lot of the page integration, but I taught myself Excel and put this together. It was probably back in 2023 was the first one that we put together, and we've been tweaking it ever since. I divide all of so let's talk about goals for a second. So I have key metrics that I want to track. So I track revenue, I track acquisitions, I track estimates sent, I track outreach that I do, I track meetings booked, I track networking events. So all the KPIs, I track PR hits. So all of the metrics that I have seen in the past that have moved the needle for the business, I want to track. And I divide my yearly goal for each of those by 4. So we can kind of track things on a quarterly basis. But what I really want to make sure that I do is every quarter is not the same, and it can't be. I know I'm going to get much less meetings booked in the month of December and the month of, July and August than I would in the spring and kind of January and February. I just know that. So first, I kind of lay out what my yearly goals are for each of these metrics. And then I kind of get an understanding of, okay, what are the percentages that I think? So for meetings booked, for example, I think I made meetings booked. I'm just even looking at this. Yeah, I put about 40% of my meetings booked for Q1. So almost half of my meetings booked I want to have in Q1 because, summertime gets really slow, and then Q4 gets really slow kind of after Thanksgiving. But Q3 is also a really important time for meetings just because everyone's planning for the next year. So I have kind of Q1 and Q3 of those like top, highest percentages for those. So then if I know everything that's, my goal for the year for that metric, and I know how each quarter is going to be, my prediction for how it's going to be divided per quarter, I get a really good understanding of per quarter what my goals are for each of those metrics. And what I do then is I have this all on Google Sheets, and I have those goals on each of the sheets separated by quarter. But then what I do is I kind of get to understand the health of where I am to that goal versus what the goal is versus what day of the year it is. So and how this kind of works is if I am halfway through the quarter and I have gotten halfway to my goal, I'm kind of at that like even percent, right? But I have it set up where if my goal is to make, right now I have, my goal for Q1 was to book 36 discovery calls. It's February 12th and I've already booked 42. We're not even halfway through the quarter and I have already exceeded my goal. So if I saw that even if I made, 30 meetings or discovery calls booked, and we're halfway through, that percentage is going to be positive because it means I'm ahead of schedule. So there's a lot of fun ways you can do that. And yeah, I mean, those are some of the big ones for me. In this spreadsheet, I also track my projections. So I kind of say, okay, here's Here's what I'm thinking the next few quarters are. Here's my goals per quarter for revenue. Here's my goals per month per revenue. And here are the contracts signed, the ones I know are coming in. Here are the hard leads. And then here are some of the soft leads that, might be 50% or less likely to sign. But it's really cool. It really helps me be able to use this data to make decisions. One thing that I am tracking, but I'm not really using quite yet, is cost per acquisition. And, I would say if you're doing anything on a digital space, understand your cost per acquisition is so important because a lot of our business development is so organic. If I think sales first, it's to me, it's not the way to go. I always have to think relationships first, and then it will very organically, multiply and turn into sales. So I am tracking our cost per acquisition basically just on kind of hours spent networking, but I'm not doing anything with that data point quite yet. Of course, ideally, the goal is to make that cost per acquisition go lower and get less. But as of right now, even if you're not doing anything with the data, I highly recommend just tracking it, just tracking the data, because you might be at the end of the year and you might have to make a big decision. And if you have no data to even point you in the right direction of which way to go, you might not be you might not feel as confident in that decision that you make. So those are my thoughts on intuition and data when it comes to your business. Um, I love looking at these numbers, and it really gives me something really cool to look back on at the end of the year as well, to see like, man, we did a shit ton this year, and we should be really proud of it. So, guys, I appreciate you checking in. I appreciate you, being part of this podcast. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you want to talk more about data and business, I would love to. Please send me a DM. And just a reminder, we are still looking for a couple more mentors for our 1-day program. If you have questions about that, you can check out our last podcast all about our youth entrepreneurship program in the Philadelphia region. We're still looking for a few mentors that are interested in supporting these kids' futures, and teaching them how to start and grow a really profitable, passionate business. So if you are interested in being part of that program, also let me know. Like and subscribe. Send this to someone that would love it. Appreciate you.